let's talk about a terrible yet easy mistake I made with my Colombian phone plan so that you don't have to deal with the same mess I did. Hi all, I'm Isrado and you're watching my travel channel where I talk all things Colombia. Today I want to talk about an agonizing process I've been through regarding my Colombian phone plan. There are honestly a lot of pitfalls when it comes to phone plans in Colombia, one of which I've talked about in a previous video, which I would highly recommend checking out. In that one I discuss all about the process of getting a phone plan and avoiding your phone from being shut off from network access, which yes, is a common occurrence if you don't adhere to certain strange requirements that they seldom tell you about. Anyway, if you want to know about that, you can find that video here or via the link in the description. Today though, I'm not talking about getting a phone plan, but rather cancelling one, which I hate to say can be just as cumbersome if you don't know what you're doing. Luckily for you, I've suffered through every possible negative outcome in this process, so I can tell you entirely from first-hand experience what not to do and how to fix things if you've already made my mistake. Just bear in mind that everything I'm about to talk about applies to Claro, as that was the mobile service company I signed up with, but if you go with a different company, not everything here will necessarily apply. With that out of the way though, let me tell you about my misadventure with Claro. Okay, so the last time I went to Colombia, I was on a postpaid plan. It was meant to be prepaid, but the store person made a blunder and gave me a postpaid plan, which I just decided to stick with because I really didn't care at the time. Anyway, fast forward to the day before I leave Colombia, I'm like, right, time to cancel this plan. Now yeah, I get it, I shouldn't have left it to the last minute, I'll pay that. Still, I promise that'll be the last instance of my own blunder in this debacle. Anyway, I go to the nearest Claro store to me, but when I ask the person there if they can cancel my plan for me, they tell me that they don't have the authority to do this, and that I'd need to go to one of the larger stores. Now honestly, I wouldn't have minded going to a separate store, but the problem was that it was late in the day, and I didn't have time to get to the nearest authorized store before it closed. And if you remember, this was the day before I left the country, which meant that this was my last opportunity to visit a Claro store before I flew out the next day. So fast forward a bit again, I'm back in Australia and I'm still on this phone plan. In case you're wondering, no, there's no simple way to cancel your plan online, the keyword being simple, but I'll get to that in a bit. So I'm like, hey, I know what I'll do, I'll message one of my Colombian friends to ask them if they can go to a Claro store and cancel my plan on my behalf. So I send a friend in Colombia my number and all my other details, and they kindly go to a store to try and cancel it for me. The person at the store though tells them that I need to write a letter of authorization that permits my friend to do this on my behalf. Okay, fair enough. So I do that, send it to another friend, as the last friend has now moved out of the country, and this other friend goes into a Claro store in her city, now with a letter signed by me that authorizes her to cancel my plan on my behalf, along with the rest of my details once again. Now this is where it starts to get a bit absurd, right? See, the person at the store tells my friend that the letter of authorization is in fact not enough. Apparently I need to either submit a request to cancel my plan online or go to the Colombian consulate in my city to get them to sort it out. I was a bit foggy on exactly what that entailed at first, but it didn't sound particularly straightforward, and I hadn't had the best experience with the embassy before, so I opted to try and do the request thing online instead. This is basically like an online form you fill out if you're having any issues with your phone plan. You choose from a list what the issue is that you're experiencing, fill out a few more details, and then it gets sent off for a person to check and respond to, and in this case to either approve or disapprove your request. So yeah, it would be nice if you could just cancel your plan yourself from the Claro website or app, but whatever. Anyway, I give it a shot, but as soon as I put my account details in, I met with an error message that says that I don't have an account with Claro, which obviously isn't true. So I decided to give it a shot on a different browser, to which it does allow me to log in. I go through all the pages, I select the option that says that I'm out of the country but would like to cancel my phone plan, and then it gets to the final step where a pop-up window opens and asks me to verify my identity. I'm sure most of you have done something like this before on one website or another. Basically, it sends you an automated email with a code, and then you have to enter that code on the website to prove that it's really you. So that's exactly what I did. I got the code, entered it in on Claro's website, and it told me that the verification was successful and the pop-up window closed. Now at this point, you'd expect the website to proceed to the next page and give you some kind of confirmation that you filled out the form. But this was not the case here. Instead, it remained stuck on the final page of the form and wouldn't progress any further. Then if I tried to proceed to the next page myself, it would just ask me to do the identity verification all over again, despite already saying that it was successful. So basically I'm stuck in a loop here. I should mention too that my Colombian friend tried it for me as well in the off chance that the issue had something to do with my Australian IP address, but they had a totally different issue where the website wouldn't let them attach a file when they tried to upload my passport, so they couldn't even get to the identity verification part. I also tried on several other browsers to no success. Now, I honestly could have given up on this method at this point, but I really wanted to avoid going to the Colombian embassy at all costs, as again, haven't had the best experience there in the past. So instead, I decided to try something else entirely. I remembered using a live WhatsApp chat service that Claro offers in the past, and to their credit, it is actually reasonably efficient. You do have to message your way through a bunch of automated responses, but eventually if you say the right thing, then it puts you through to an actual person who replies reasonably quickly. So I make contact and explain to the person on the live chat all of the key things I've just described in this video, including how my friend tried to go into the store to cancel on my behalf using a letter of authorization, but was declined. To that, this person on the chat told me that it wasn't enough to have a letter with a signature on it, but get this, that it also needed to be notarized. Now you might say, oh well, not hard to find a justice of peace to sign your document, just go to the chemist or something, and there you go, barely an inconvenience. And yeah, if that's all I had to do, it would be easy, but there was an issue here. See, the person in the chat told me that the letter needed to have a notary stamp or seal. Now, a stamp is not something you can get from a JP, it's something you gotta go to a notary public for. The problem with that though is that notary publics don't typically offer their services for free here. If you want them to witness a signature and stamp a document, you'll be paying around $100 Australian for that. Now, it's one thing to put people through a maze of bureaucracy just to cancel their phone plan, but it's another thing if you're also requiring them to pay money out of their own pockets. That was a line I was not going to cross, so I came up with another idea. I went in and contacted someone in the live chat again and explained to them the whole issue with the website not advancing past the identity verification. Then I asked them if they would mind trying on my behalf, because, you know, if an actual person working at Claro can see from their own first-hand experience that the website isn't working, then the ball is very much in their court, and I'd hope that it'd be on them to come up with a solution that doesn't involve me paying out of pocket for a notary. So thankfully, this person was quite personable and agreed right away to fill out the form on my behalf. When they got to the end of it though, they told me that it was successfully sent through somehow. So yeah, I don't know why it worked for them and not for any of my 4 internet browsers or my Colombian friend, but whatever. I was just relieved we were making progress, or so I thought. See, this wasn't actually the end of it, as the person told me that it can take up to 24 hours for the form to be filed, which has to be done before someone can even respond to it. So I checked back the next day with another person via the chat, well after 24 hours I should add, to see if it's gone through, to which they tell me it has not. Needless to say, I'm pretty disappointed hearing this, because this felt like my only viable option, honestly. I did ask about the possibility of doing a video call with the person in store to authorize the cancellation, but they told me that this wasn't allowed. Regardless, this person agrees to try submitting the form again for me anyway, which they did, but once again I'd have to wait up to 24 hours to know if it had been filed, or so I thought. See, this time I was told that I'd receive an email within 30 minutes confirming if it was successfully filed, and yeah, look, I was jaded enough to not get my hopes up this time, and sure enough, I never got this email. So I'm like, okay, as desperate as I am, I really don't want to pursue the alternative of paying $100 to a notary just to cancel my phone plan. And then I remember what my Colombian friend told me about how another option was to go to the Colombian embassy to get them to figure it out. Again, I was also pretty hesitant to pursue this option, but I was at least curious as to exactly what it entailed, so I did a bit of research, and what I discovered was the most outrageous thing I'd come across in this entire process. See, what I learned was that there are several levels of security when it comes to verifying a document. So the basic level, which should work in the majority of situations, is just your signature on a document, and honestly that should have been enough for this scenario too. If you do need a witnessing of the signature though, well then that's when you go to a justice of peace, which is usually enough to verify it within your own country. If more security is required though, well then the level above that would be to go to a notary public to witness the signature and possibly give the document a notary stamp or seal. As said, here in Australia this typically costs around $100 Australian, so it's a pretty high level of security. If even more is required though, that's when, in addition to getting it notarized, you go to the Department of Foreign Affairs to get it authenticated. This is where they give you an apostille, which is a certificate they usually attach to your document that often has one of those expensive red seals on it. Now here's the thing, right? This level of security should absolutely suffice for verifying the vast majority of documents, and most notably, this includes verifying high-level security documents for use overseas. I say this because most countries, including Australia and Colombia, are part of what's known as the Hague Apostille Convention. What this is an international treaty, which means that if you go to the Department of Foreign Affairs in one country, the authentication your document receives will be recognised in the majority of countries around the world, without the need for any extra steps in verifying it, which was what this treaty was designed to abolish. For some of the most high security cases you can think of, like verifying a birth certificate overseas or university testaments, this is widely considered absolutely sufficient. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's not even necessary. But if you do get your letter authenticated, man, that document is legit. I should also note that getting an apostille from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade will cost you around 100 Australian dollars here, in addition to the $100 you already paid for the notary. So yeah, you're really not mucking around at this point. Still, there are some very rare cases where more verification is required, which brings me to the top level in this tier list. See, in addition to getting the document notarized and authenticated, you can also finally get it certified by the embassy of the country you want to use it in, where they'll sign off on it with a signature or a stamp after verifying the apostille and notarization. Now, I really need to stress again, this step is completely unnecessary in the vast majority of cases. Getting an apostille is already a foolproof option since it's recognized in most countries you're likely to be in, and as I said before, most of the time it's not even necessary as it's usually only requested for extremely important documents. So with that in mind, you can see why it's total overkill to take it a step beyond that and get certification from an embassy after already getting it authenticated. Usually the only time someone should ever request this is if 1, the document is extremely important, and 2, if they're in one of the small handful of countries that aren't part of the Hague Convention, and or if your country isn't. Remember though, as I said before, both Colombia and Australia are part of this convention. Okay, so that was a long explanation of how all this legal stuff works, but now that you're in the know, let's bring this all back to my misadventure with Claro. See, what makes this all so outrageous is how Claro responded to me when I asked them exactly how much verification was required. I think you can already see where this is going, so I'm just gonna rip the band-aid off here. Claro wanted me to provide not simply a letter of cancellation that had been notarized, nor a letter that had been authenticated by the DFAT in addition to being notarized. No, they wanted everything I have just described. So let me spell this whole dilemma out. To cancel my phone plan, I need to provide Claro with a letter authorizing someone in Colombia to cancel it in-store on my behalf with my own signature, and the letter needs to be notarized by a notary public, authorized with an apostille by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and certified by the Colombian embassy. To cancel a phone plan. What planet are we living on? So yeah, honestly by now this has circled around to being comical, especially when you consider that this is the only official means I have of cancelling a plan, given that the website was broken. But you know what they say, when you hit rock bottom, you get out your shovel and make that hole even deeper. That's right, it gets even worse. See, when I asked whether I could send a digital scan of the documents, I was told that it was recommended to send them physically, as they couldn't guarantee that they'd be accepted in digital form. So what this means basically is that in addition to forking out $200 on a notary and apostille, I've also now got to pay another 50 Australian dollars for postage. Now I realise I could pay less than that for the delivery of a letter, but let's be real, there's no way in the world I'm sending a letter worth $200 to Colombia without tracking, with only my hope that it doesn't get lost in the mail. If I want tracking though, $50. Not that sending it physically would necessarily guarantee they'd approve it either, because you know, at the end of the day it's probably at the discretion of the store person. Anyway, hearing all that was really the last straw for me. I had been polite this whole time, and I still never gave in to my anger over the situation, but at this point I did express my frustration over it all, and how I thought it was unreasonable to expect me to pay $250 as the only means of cancelling my phone plan, just because their website didn't work, I might add. The person on the live chat was reasonably understanding about it, but there wasn't much they could do, so they just sent me an email to forward my complaint to. I'd lost all hope by now, but I sent the email anyway, if nothing else just to have the catharsis of explaining to another person at Claro how ludicrous this ordeal was. But you know, it occurred to me at this point that I may have even had some legal ground to stand on. Like, when you really spell out what's happening, the fact is, being forced to pay a lot of money to cancel a subscription purely because a company's infrastructure isn't functioning doesn't exactly sound like it's a practice that's above the law. I mean, that would be obvious somewhere like Australia, because let's face it, if a company tried that en masse here, they'd be sued up the wazoo, but I'm not as privy to Colombia's consumer law. So I decided to consult my old mate ChatGPT, which under most circumstances I would not endorse using for legal advice, but in this case I had nothing to lose. So I described my situation to it and asked if there was any part of Colombian law that this whole ordeal would violate. Sure enough, it did pull up a reference to what's known as the Superintendencia de Industria y Comercio de Colombia, or the Superintendents of Colombia Industry and Trade. Specifically, Article 3 of the Consumer Protection Law guarantees, at least according to ChatGPT, which may or may not be right, but it probably is, that consumers have the right of protection against abusive practices and the right to effectively exercise their rights. Not the most specific clause, but whatever, I'll take it. So I wrote up the email explaining everything that happened and included this little legal tidbit that I could appeal to, and then waited a few days. I realized after sending it that, again, at least according to ChatGPT, there was another legal clause in Colombia that states something to the effect of companies being required to have a functional service, which felt like something that pertained a lot more specifically to my case, so kind of regretted not knowing that before I sent the email, but whatever. Anyway, a few days passed, and then the unthinkable happened. I got a response, and for legal reasons I can't read it here, but it happened. They finally did it. They cancelled my plan. Oh my goodness, what a wild ride that was. I don't know if the legal jargon I included had anything to do with their decision, but whatever the case, they just cancelled it like that, no questions asked. So yeah, with that in mind, I wanted to close this with a few takeaways, to make it more than just a rant. First of all, Colombian bureaucracy can be beyond tedious, be prepared for that. Second of all, if you have a postpaid Colombian phone plan, then for the love of all that is good, cancel that thing before you leave. Preferably several days before you leave so you don't miss the opportunity like I did. And third takeaway, if you do make my terrible mistake, then you can give the complaint form a try, but if it doesn't work like it didn't for me, then just go straight to the support email. I don't know if the email address is public, so I won't share it here, but just ask someone on the WhatsApp chat what the complaints and solutions email is, and they should give it to you. And that's about it. I don't know, I feel like this is kind of anticlimactic, but that's about all I have to say. If you have any questions or video suggestions, leave them in the comments below. But otherwise, thanks for watching all this way, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.